The morning my world collapsed started with an email from our mortgage broker congratulating me on paying off our lake house, a lake house I didn't know we owned. 10 years of marriage, and I discovered my husband had been living a double life. Just by checking my spam folder. My name is Vivian Mercer, and this is the story of how my husband's betrayal led to his own downfall, all because he never bothered to read the fine print. Before we dive back in, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And if this story resonates with you, don't forget to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is something truly special I can't wait to share. I stared at my laptop screen, coffee growing cold beside me, as confusion turned to suspicion. The email addressed me specifically. Congratulations, Mrs. Mercer, on your final payment for the Cedar Lake property, complete with an attached deed and payment. Confirmation. The property address was unfamiliar. 428 Lakeview Drive, Cedar Falls, 2 hours north of our suburban home in Westridge. There must be some mistake, I muttered, reaching for my phone to call Derek, my investment banker husband of 10 years. The call went straight to voicemail. Hey, it's me. There's some weird email about a lake house payment. Call me back when you get this. Derek and I had been saving for years. For retirement. For eventually starting the family we'd been putting off. For the dream home we planned to build. Our joint account should have had close to $380,000 in it. I hadn't checked the balance. In months. Derek handled our finances, a division of labor that made sense given his expertise. I logged into our banking app, expecting to see our nest egg intact. Instead, I found recurring transfers dating back 18 months, large sums, twice monthly, draining our account to a balance of just $12,463.92. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the transfer history. $15,000 to Cedar Lake Property, $8,500 to Interior Designs by Natalie, $22,000 to Lakeside Renovations LLC. The evidence mounted with each swipe of my finger. I dialed Derek again. Voicemail. I texted, "Need to talk ASAP. Something's wrong with our accounts." I opened my laptop again and searched the Cedar Falls property records database. There it was, 428 Lakeview Drive, purchased 18 months ago for $320,000, with subsequent permits filed for renovations totaling nearly $100,000. I clicked to view the deed. Owner, Vivian A. Mercer, not Derek and Vivian Mercer. Not Derek Mercer, just my name. I blinked, read it again. The lake house was in my name only. I scrolled through my email, searching for any previous correspondence about this property. Nothing. My husband had somehow purchased a lake house, put it in my name, and never mentioned it once in 18 months. My phone rang. My best friend and business partner, Renee. "You're late for the client meeting," she said without preamble. "Everything okay?" "I think Derek bought a secret lake house." "He what?" "And put it in my name. I just found out." "Viv, where are you?" "Home. Stay there. I'll reschedule with Phillips and be over in 20. I hung up and did what any reasonable person would do. I searched social media for Derek's recent activity. Nothing unusual on his barely used Facebook page or LinkedIn profile. Then, on a whim, I searched Instagram for the Cedar Lake property address as a location tag. Several photos appeared: sunset views over water, interior shots of a modern rustic retreat, a fire pit glowing against a twilight sky. I clicked on a user named Nat Designs, whose bio read Interior Designer, Turning Houses into Dreams. Her gallery featured dozens of photos of the lake house renovation process, and there, in several images, was Derek, my Derek, with his arm around a stunning redhead, both of them smiling in front of the lake house, my lake house. The most recent photo was posted just 3 days ago, captioned, "Weekend getaway with my love. 3-day weekends should be mandatory. Lake house. Love. Interior designer." Renee found me still scrolling through Natalie's Instagram page when she arrived, letting herself in with the spare key she'd had for years. "Whoa," she said, looking over my shoulder. "That's definitely Derek." "And that's definitely not our money being spent on our future," I said, my voice hollow. "That's our savings being spent on his mistress and their secret love nest." "The one that's in your name?" Renee asked, her lawyer's mind already working. "Apparently. Why would he put a secret property in your name? That makes no sense." "Nothing makes sense right now," I said, finally letting a tear escape. "We've been talking about starting a family, about building our dream home. Meanwhile, he's been building one with someone else." My phone buzzed with a text from Derek. "In meetings all day." "What's wrong with the accounts?" "Don't tell him what?" "You know," Renee said instantly. "Not yet." "Why not?" "Because knowledge is power, and right now you have it all." She tapped her fingers against my laptop. "And because that house is legally yours." I stared at her, realization dawning slowly. "You think he put it in my name to hide it from someone else?" "Tax evasion, hiding assets from his firm, concealing money from creditors, could be anything," Renee said. "But whatever his reason, he made a critical mistake." My phone buzzed again. "Viv? What's going on with the accounts? What do I do?" Whispered, showing Renee the message. "We find out everything first," she said, a determined glint in her eye. "Then you decide how to proceed." I nodded, feeling something shift inside me, grief giving way to resolve. "I need to see it," I said suddenly. "The lake house. I need to see it with my own eyes." Renee grabbed her car keys from her purse. "I'll drive." As we headed toward Cedar Falls, I typed a response to Derek. "Just some strange activity. Bank says it's probably nothing. Talk tonight. Let him think everything was normal. Let him continue his weekend plans with Natalie. Let him enjoy the lake house while he could, because unbeknownst to Derek Mercer, his carefully constructed double, life was about to implode. And the woman he'd underestimated for a decade was about to reclaim everything he'd stolen from her, starting with the truth. And the truth, as it turned out, had a breathtaking view of Cedar Lake and my name on the deed. It took a lot of care and time to prepare and narrate this for you, so if you're enjoying it, a quick subscribe really helps and means the world to us. All right, let's get back to it. The 2-hour drive to Cedar Falls gave me time to process my shock and formulate a plan. Renee kept glancing at me as she drove, clearly concerned about my unusual calmness. "You're taking this better than I expected," she said as we passed the county line sign. "I'm compartmentalizing," I replied, scrolling through 18 months of bank statements on my phone. "Right now, I need information more than I need emotions." The truth was, beneath my composed exterior, I was cycling through grief, rage, and disbelief. 10 years of marriage, and Derek had betrayed me in the most calculated way possible. This wasn't a drunken mistake or a momentary lapse in judgment. This was sustained deception requiring hundreds of individual choices. "The property taxes," I said suddenly, finding another series of payments. "He's been paying them from our joint account too." "More evidence it's technically your house," Renee said. "You've been paying the taxes." I continued digging through our financial history, while Renee drove. Derek had been methodical about the transfers, never taking so much at once that I might notice, spreading withdrawals across different weeks, labeling them with innocuous descriptions like investment transfer or portfolio diversification. Phone buzzed with a text from Derek. "Everything okay with the accounts? Should I call the bank?" The casual deception in his message made my stomach turn. I typed back, "No need. False alarm. How's your meeting going?" "Brutal. We'll be late tonight." Don't wait up. Of course he'd be late. According to Natalie's Instagram, they had dinner reservations at Lakeside Bistro, evidenced by her post from last weekend. Friday tradition with my love, Lakeside Bistro, a date night. He says he'll be late tonight, I told Renee. Presumably, meeting his girlfriend at the lake house. Renee's grip tightened on the steering wheel. Then we have time to investigate thoroughly before deciding our next move. The GPS directed us to turn onto Lakeview Drive, a winding road with glimpses of sparkling water between luxury homes. My heartbeat quickened as we approached number 428, my house, apparently. It was stunning. A modern A-frame with expansive windows and a wraparound deck nestled among tall pines with the lake glittering beyond. A boat dock extended into the water, where a sleek speedboat was moored. He bought a boat too, I whispered. Another asset I hadn't known about. Another betrayal. Is that it? Renee nodded toward a detached garage with what appeared to be an apartment above. The interior designs by Natalie headquarters, perhaps? I checked the property listing I'd pulled up during our drive. The listing mentioned a designer studio apartment above garage. I think you're right. We parked down the street and observed the property for several minutes. No movement, no cars in the driveway. What now? Renee asked. We could peek through windows, but that feels a bit too amateur detective for me. I reached into my purse and pulled out my wallet, flipping through cards until I found what I was looking for, an overlooked detail that now seemed monumental. I have a key. What? How? Remember last Christmas when Derek gave me that charm? Bracelet with the little silver house and key? He said the key was symbolic of our future dream home. I laughed bitterly. The actual house key was on my key ring, labeled safety deposit box. I always wondered why we needed one. Renee stared at me. That's either extremely careless or incredibly arrogant of him. Probably both, I said, stepping out of the car. He never expected me to find out. He probably thought it was clever, hiding the key in plain sight. We approached the house cautiously, though there was no reason for stealth. This was legally my property. The key slid into the front door lock and turned smoothly. The interior was even more beautiful than Natalie's Instagram photos had captured. Vaulted ceilings, a stone fireplace, gleaming hardwood floors, and high-end furniture that I recognized from invoices labeled investment pieces in our bank statements. What I'd assumed were additions to Derek's office had actually been furnishing his love nest. I'm taking pictures of everything, Renee said, her phone already out. Documentation is key. I moved through the house in a daze, noting every detail that connected to our depleted savings. The Sub-Zero refrigerator, the Viking range, the California king bed upstairs with linens I'd never seen before. In the master bathroom, I found her things. Expensive skincare products, makeup, a silk robe hanging on the door, and in the medicine cabinet, birth control pills prescribed to Natalie Winters. She lives here, I said, my voice hollow. This isn't just a weekend getaway. This is their home. In the home office, we hit the mother lode. A filing cabinet contained documentation for everything: the property purchase, renovation contracts, utility setups. And most importantly, the deed bearing my signature, a signature I immediately recognized as forged. He committed fraud, Renee said, photographing the document. Multiple counts. But why put it in my name? Why not hers? I asked. Renee opened another drawer and pulled out more files. Because of this, I'm guessing. It was an employment contract. Derek had hired Natalie as a design consultant for his investment firm. The contract was dated 2 years ago, meaning their relationship began before the house purchase. Office romance turned into something more, Renee said. If he put property in her name while she was his employee, it would raise red flags with HR and possibly the Financial Compliance Board. So he used my name instead, I said, the pieces falling into place. He needed a legitimate owner who wouldn't trigger any alarms. And he probably assumed that if you ever discovered it, you wouldn't fight him for it in a divorce because technically, half of it would be his as marital property. I leaned against the desk, steadying myself. He's been planning for contingencies, But he didn't plan for you finding out while the deed is still solely in your name, Renee pointed out. I noticed a laptop on the desk and opened it. Password protected, of course. But a yellow sticky note on the bottom had what looked like a password hint. NW22 Pal anniversary. Natalie Winters, maybe? And their anniversary? I tried N Winters 22 plus 11320 based on the contract date I'd seen. The screen unlocked. Predictable, Renee muttered, shaking her head. I found emails between Derek and various contractors confirming my suspicions about the diverted funds. But I also found something unexpected. A draft resignation letter from Derek to his firm, dated for the following month, and emails discussing opening a boutique investment agency with a colleague. He's planning to leave his job, I said, forwarding the emails to myself. And he's using our savings to do it. As we continued searching, we found evidence that Derek had been systematically moving assets around, setting up new accounts, exploring offshore options, researching states with favorable divorce laws. He's preparing to leave you, Renee said, quietly. And he's hiding assets. I closed the laptop, a strange calm washing over me. No, he's giving me everything I need to take him down. We spent another hour documenting everything in the house, taking photos, collecting evidence. Before leaving, I noticed a wall calendar in the kitchen with Dinner with Hartmans, 8 p.m. Friday, written on the upcoming weekend. The Hartmans, I said, recognizing the name. Jim Hartman is Derek's managing partner. He's introducing her to his colleagues, Renee noted, getting ready to make the relationship official. As we drove back to Westridge, I was no longer just hurt. I was resolute. Derek hadn't just betrayed our marriage. He'd stolen our future and planned to discard me once everything was in place. I need a lawyer, I said, as Renee pulled onto the highway. Not just any lawyer, someone who specializes in financial fraud and high-asset divorces. I know just the person, Renee replied, a cold smile forming. Victoria Zhao. She used to work for the SEC before going into private practice. She's earned the nickname the Executioner in divorce court. Perfect, I said, pulling out my phone to make a note. And I'll need a forensic accountant. Already texting my contact, Renee said. What about tonight? What will you say to Derek? I looked out at the setting sun, my reflection in the window showing a woman I barely recognized. Harder, more determined than the trusting wife I'd been this morning. Nothing, I said finally. I'll say absolutely nothing. Let him think everything is normal while I gather every piece of evidence I can find. Let him keep digging his own grave. And then? I thought about the dinner with the Hartmans, about the resignation letter, about the life Derek was preparing to step into while leaving me financially devastated. And then I'll show him exactly whose name is on that deed. The week that followed, my discovery was the performance of a lifetime. Each morning, I kissed Derek goodbye as he left for work. Each evening, I listened to his fabricated stories about late meetings and client dinners. I maintained the routine of our marriage while systematically preparing for its end. Victoria Zhao, the lawyer Renee recommended, wasted no time. Her office was sleek and intimidating, much like the woman herself, impeccably dressed with a piercing gaze that missed nothing. So he forged your signature on legal documents, diverted marital assets, and is planning to leave both you and his firm. She summarized after reviewing our evidence, all while putting substantial assets solely in your name. That's correct, I confirmed. Victoria's smile was razor-sharp. Mrs. Mercer, your husband has given us a gift. A very expensive gift wrapped in fraudulent documentation. The forensic team. Accountant Renee had recommended Martin Diaz joined us with his preliminary findings. Beyond the lake house, I've identified approximately $145,000 in additional diverted funds, he explained, sliding a spreadsheet across the desk. Restaurant charges, jewelry purchases, designer furniture, all paid from your joint accounts. But clearly not for your benefit. Can we prove the forgery? I asked. Definitively, Victoria confirmed. We have documentation of where you actually were when the deed was supposedly signed. Plus, the notary who allegedly witnessed your signature has a troubling history of complaints. Throughout the week, I learned more about Natalie Winters. She was 29, 7 years younger than me, hired by Derek's firm as a junior designer for their office spaces before being promoted to personal design consultant for high-value clients. Her previous Instagram posts revealed a woman ambitious and calculating. Her subtle hints about upgrading lifestyles and designing for the future took on new meaning in light of my discoveries. Friday is the dinner with the Hartmans, I told Victoria during our Thursday meeting. Based on the emails we found, Derek intends to introduce Natalie as his girlfriend and discuss his plans to leave the firm. Perfect timing, Victoria replied. Our preparations are in place. The property has been secured with new locks, and the emergency injunction freezing your joint assets is ready to file the moment we move. Are you sure about attending this dinner? Martin asked, concern evident in his voice. We could execute everything without that confrontation. I appreciated his concern, but my mind was made up. The dinner isn't just about confronting Derek. It's about making sure his colleagues understand exactly what kind of man they've been working with, a man who defrauds his own wife and company. Victoria nodded approvingly. Just remember, once we move, things will happen very quickly. The police will be notified about the forgery. The restraining order will be filed based on financial abuse, and your separate accounts will be protected. That night, I watched Derek pack an overnight bag, claiming he had an early breakfast meeting near the office. The casual ease of his lies was almost impressive. I might drive up to see my sister this weekend, I said, testing him. Since you'll be busy with work. Great idea, he replied, not missing a beat. You two should catch up. He kissed my forehead before leaving, and I forced myself not to recoil. Love you, he said, the words hollow. I know exactly how much, I replied with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. After he left, I called my sister Claire, who had been my rock throughout this ordeal. It's happening tomorrow, I told her. I'm coming over, she insisted. You shouldn't be alone tonight. With Claire's support, I finalized my preparations. We transferred personal mementos and irreplaceable items to her house, secure from whatever fallout would come. I packed a single suitcase with necessities for my confrontation at Cedar Lake. Friday dawned clear and bright, inappropriately beautiful for the storm I was about to unleash. Derek texted that he was swamped with meetings and would meet me directly at the Hartmans' home for dinner. The address he provided was, unsurprisingly, the lake house. He doesn't even know that I know about the house, I told Claire as she helped me get ready. He thinks he's cleverly introducing me to it as the Hartmans' place. The audacity is almost impressive, Claire muttered, zipping up the sleek black dress we'd selected for the occasion. Are you nervous? Beyond nervous, I admitted, but I'm more determined than afraid. By 6 p.m., everything was in place. Victoria and her team were on standby. Martin had provided documentation for every cent Derek had misappropriated. The property management company had changed the locks that morning, with the new keys now in my possession. Police in Cedar Falls had been notified about potential disturbance at the address, with documentation of my legal ownership provided in advance. Renee drove me to Cedar Lake, the car mostly silent as I mentally rehearsed what was to come. Remember, she said as we neared our destination, you hold all the cards here. He just doesn't know it yet. The lake house was lit up beautifully against the twilight sky, with several luxury vehicles already parked in the driveway. I recognized Jim Hartman's distinctive Tesla and the BMW that belonged to Sarah Chen, another partner at Derek's firm. Quite the audience, Renee observed. Ready? I took a deep breath. As I'll ever be. We approached the front door, and I rang, the bell to my own house. Footsteps approached, and the door swung open to reveal Natalie, stunning in a green dress that matched the emerald ring on her finger, another purchase I'd found in our bank statements. Her smile faltered as she recognized me, confusion crossing her features. "Can I help you?" "I believe I'm expected for dinner," I replied smoothly. "I'm Vivian Mercer." The color drained from her face. "Vivian? Derek's wife?" "The very same. May I come in? To my house?" From inside, Derek's voice called out, "Nat, who is it?" I stepped past a frozen Natalie into the entryway, Renee right behind me. The house was beautifully arranged for entertaining, with flowers, candles, and the dining table set for 6. Derek emerged from the kitchen, wine bottle in hand, his expression transforming from casual welcome to horror as he saw me. "Vivian," he choked out. How did you—" "Find the lake house I own?" I finished for him. "Interesting story, actually. Perhaps I should share it with your colleagues?" As if on cue, Jim Hartman and his wife appeared from the living room, followed by Sarah Chen and her husband. The confusion on their faces would have been comical under different circumstances. "Derek?" Jim questioned. "What's going on? I thought you said Vivian couldn't make it." "She couldn't," Derek said quickly, recovering. "This is a surprise." "It certainly is," I agreed pleasantly. "Almost as surprising as discovering I own a lake house I never knew about." The room went silent. Natalie took a step back, her eyes darting between Derek and me. "Perhaps we should explain," I continued, moving further into the room. "You see, Derek has been telling you all that this lovely home belongs to him and his girlfriend, Natalie. What he failed to mention is that the deed is solely in my name." "Vivian, you're confused," Derek attempted, his voice strained. "Let's talk privately." Jim Hartman's expression had darkened. "Derek, is this true?" "It's complicated," Derek hedged. "Not really," I countered, opening my purse and removing copies of the deed and property tax statements. "The documentation is quite straightforward. This house, purchased with our joint savings I might add, is legally mine. My signature on the deed, however, is a forgery." Sarah Chen, ever the sharp-minded partner, connected the dots immediately. "You used company resources to commit fraud?" Derek's face contorted with anger. "Vivian, stop this now. You're embarrassing yourself." "No, Derek. You've done that quite thoroughly on your own." I turned to address the room. "I apologize for disrupting your evening, but I thought you should know that the man you're in business with has been systematically defrauding both his wife and potentially his firm." "That's a lie," Derek snapped. I pulled out my phone, pulled up the forwarded emails, and handed it to Jim Hartman. "These might interest you. Derek's plans to leave the firm next month, taking several key clients with him. There's also documentation of how he's been categorizing personal expenses, like this house, as business investments." Jim scrolled through the emails, his expression growing grimmer by the second. Sarah peered over his shoulder, her sharp intake of breath confirming what they were seeing. "Derek, we need to talk, now." Jim's voice had lost any warmth. Natalie finally found her voice. "I don't understand. You said this was our house. You said your wife knew about us, that you were separating." "He lied to everyone," I said quietly. "Including you." Derek lunged forward suddenly, grabbing my arm. "This is insane. You're twisting everything." "Let go of my wife," a new voice commanded. My brother-in-law Michael, Claire's husband and a former military police officer, stepped into the house behind Renee. We had planned for him to wait outside, but his timing was perfect. Derek released me, taking a step back. "This is a private matter." "Not anymore," I replied. "The police have been notified about the forgery. Victoria Zhao filed for an emergency injunction this afternoon, freezing all our joint assets pending investigation. And as of this morning, the locks have been changed on this property." As if to punctuate my statement, 2 Cedar Falls police officers appeared at the still open door. "Mrs. Mercer?" one asked. "We received your call about potential disturbance during a property dispute." "Thank you for coming," I acknowledged. "The situation is under control for now, but I'd appreciate it if you could ensure Mr. Mercer leaves the premises without incident." Derek's face had gone from red to white. "You can't do this." "I already have," I replied calmly. "You put the house in my name, Derek. You paid for it with our money. And now it's time for you to leave my property." Jim Hartman placed a heavy hand on Derek's shoulder. "We're leaving, and you'll be hearing from company counsel first thing Monday morning." As the group began moving toward the door, Natalie remained frozen in place, her world visibly crumbling around her. "You can take your personal belongings," I told her quietly, "but I'll need the key." Wordlessly, she removed a key from her purse and placed it on the entry table. "Did you know?" I asked her. "About the forgery? The stolen funds?" Her eyes met, mine, tears brimming. "I knew he was married. He said you had an arrangement, that you were separating. I didn't know about—" She gestured vaguely around the house. I simply nodded. Her complicity wasn't my concern anymore. As they all filed, "Out!" Derek turned at the door, fury and disbelief warring on his face. "You've ruined everything." "No, Derek," I corrected him. "You did that when you decided our life savings would look better spent on your mistress. I'm just making sure you understand whose name is really on the deed, to this house and to the consequences of your actions." The police escorted him to his car, and I watched from the doorway as the man I had loved for a decade drove away from the life he had built on lies. "Well," Renee said into the silence that followed, "I think that went rather well." The aftermath of that Friday night unfolded with dizzying speed. I spent the weekend at the lake house, not in triumph, but in quiet contemplation, taking inventory of both the physical property and my emotional landscape. Renee stayed with me, fielding calls from Victoria and providing the buffer I desperately needed from the outside world. By Sunday evening, my phone had accumulated 47 missed calls. From Derek, 18 voicemails ranging from apologetic to threatening, and dozens of text messages I couldn't bring myself to read. His family had also begun reaching out. His mother, his sister, even his cousin who I'd barely spoken to in years. "They're in damage control mode," Renee observed as my phone buzzed with yet another call from Derek's mother. "They're afraid of what you'll do next." "What I'll do next is precisely what I planned," I replied, finally turning off my phone. Follow through. Monday morning brought the legal storm we had prepared for. Victoria filed the divorce papers citing fraud and financial abuse, along with documentation of the forgery for criminal investigation. Derek was served at his parents' home, where he had apparently retreated after being denied access to our primary residence by the temporary restraining order. His response was swift and desperate. By noon, his lawyer had reached out to Victoria proposing a settlement, one that would have me return the lake house to Derek in exchange for keeping our primary home and a modest cash payment. "He still doesn't understand what's happening," Victoria said when she called to relay the offer. "He thinks this is a negotiation where he has leverage." "Decline," I instructed her, and informed them that the forensic accounting team has identified additional accounts we're preparing to freeze. This wasn't entirely true. Martin was still working through the complex web of Derek's financial maneuvers, but Victoria assured me the implied threat would keep Derek's team scrambling. By Tuesday, the professional consequences began cascading. Jim Hartman called to inform me that Derek had been placed on administrative leave pending investigation, and that several clients had already requested transfers to other advisors after hearing rumors of impropriety. "The firm would appreciate your discretion regarding certain client matters," Jim said carefully, clearly concerned about potential fallout. "My issue is with Derek, not the firm," I assured him. "As long as the company cooperates with the financial investigation, I have no reason to involve your clients. Jim's relief was palpable. Thank you, Vivian. And for what it's worth, many of us had no idea. The Derek we thought we knew would never have done something like this. That makes two of us, I replied, the bitter truth of it still fresh. Wednesday brought a surprising visitor to the lake house, Natalie herself, looking significantly less polished than she had at our first meeting. I wasn't sure you'd let me in, she said when I opened the door. I wasn't sure either, I admitted, but stepped aside to allow her entry. She stood awkwardly in the entryway, clutching a large envelope. I brought these for you, text messages, emails, photos, everything that shows when our relationship started, and what Derek told me about you and your marriage. I accepted the envelope, surprised by the gesture. Why? Because he lied to me too, she said, her voice steady despite the tears gathering in her eyes. He told me you had an open marriage, that you were only staying together for appearances. Later, he claimed you were separating but keeping it quiet for financial reasons. And you believed him, I said, not as an accusation but as a statement of fact. I wanted to, she admitted. By the time I had doubts, I was already in too deep. He was my boss, my boyfriend, my future, or so I thought. I gestured for her to sit, surprising myself with the invitation. When did you start to suspect the truth? When he put the house in your name, not mine. He claimed it was for tax purposes, that it would be transferred to us after your divorce was finalized. She gave a humorless laugh. I should have known. Then, but I convinced myself it made sense. I examined her more carefully now, seeing beyond the other woman to someone who had also been manipulated, albeit with more willing participation than me. The firm fired me yesterday, she continued. I've been blacklisted in the corporate design world. I'm not asking for sympathy, but I wanted you to know that I'm facing consequences too. What will you do now? I found myself asking. Move back to Chicago. Start over. She hesitated. There's something else you should know. The offshore accounts? There are 3. Not just the one your accountant found. I have the details in there too. She nodded toward the envelope. After she left, I called Martin, immediately about the offshore accounts. His excitement was palpable as I relayed the information. This changes everything, he said. With these additional accounts, we're looking at nearly $200,000 more that he's hidden. Later that evening, my sister Claire came to stay with me, bringing comfort food and a much-needed perspective from someone who had known me before I was Vivian Mercer, Derek's wife. Remember when we were kids and that boy stole your science project? She asked as we sat on the deck overlooking the lake. Mom wanted to call the school, but you insisted on handling it yourself. I smiled at the memory. I recreated the entire project overnight and presented both versions to the class, his stolen one and my new improved one, and then calmly explained how scientific ethics work, including proper citation and not taking credit for other people's work, Claire finished laughing. He was mortified and you never raised your voice once. I'd forgotten about that, I admitted. Well, I haven't. You've always been like this, Viv. Methodical, determined, and ultimately kind even when standing your ground. She squeezed my hand. That's who you are without Derek. That's who you've always been. Thursday morning, I met with my financial advisor, not associated with Derek's firm, to begin restructuring my future. With the lake house as a significant asset, and the forensic accounting uncovering more of our recovered joint savings each day, my financial picture was not as bleak as Derek had undoubtedly hoped it would be when he eventually left me. Even without counting the potential recovery from the offshore accounts, you're in a stable position, my advisor assured me. The lake house alone has appreciated considerably since purchase due to the renovations. What about selling it? I asked, still uncertain about keeping a property with such complicated associations. I'd wait at least 6 months, she advised. Let the market assessment stabilize after the renovations, and give yourself time to make decisions not driven by the current situation. Her advice made sense. This wasn't the time for sweeping changes based on emotional responses. By Friday, exactly 1 week after the confrontation, another unexpected visitor arrived at the lake house. Derek's father, Robert, a retired judge whom I had always respected, stood on my doorstep looking far older than when I'd last seen him at Christmas. "May I come in, Vivian?" he asked, his voice heavy with what seemed like genuine regret. I hesitated before nodding, leading him to the living room where the evening sun cast long shadows across the expensive furniture Derek had selected. "I'm not here to defend my son," Robert began once seated. "What he did is indefensible." "Then why are you here?" I asked, my guard still firmly in place. "To apologize, for what little that's worth. And to let you know that his mother and I are not supporting his attempts to reclaim this property or dispute the divorce terms." He looked around, taking in the house for the first time. "We raised him better than this, or thought we did." The admission clearly cost him dearly, his pride as a parent visibly wounded. "Have you spoken with him?" I asked. "Yes. He's staying with his cousin in Rochester, still in denial about the severity of what he's done." Robert shook his head slowly. "The criminal investigation into the forgery? That's real, isn't it?" "Yes," I confirmed. "The district attorney is reviewing the case." Robert nodded, accepting this. "If he's charged, we won't be posting bail. He needs to face the consequences of his actions." The statement stunned me. The Mercer family had always closed ranks around their own. This arrangement with this woman, Robert continued awkwardly. "How long did you know?" "I found out last week," I said, realizing he thought I might have been complicit, or at least aware. "The same day I discovered the lake house existed." Robert's expression showed genuine shock. "Margaret, Derek's mother, she thought you must have known, that perhaps there was some arrangement." "There was no arrangement," I said firmly. "There was only betrayal." After Robert left, promising to keep the lines of communication open, regarding family matters, I felt a strange sense of closure beginning to form. The people in Derek's life, his colleagues, his girlfriend, even his parents, were now seeing him clearly, perhaps for the first time. That evening, I sat on the dock, watching the sunset paint the lake in brilliant oranges and pinks. My phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. "Criminal charges for forgery being filed tomorrow. Mercer team requesting urgent meeting to discuss settlement." I typed back, "Schedule for Monday, no rush on our end." For the first time since discovering Derek's betrayal, I felt no urgency, no burning need to respond immediately. The power dynamic had shifted completely. While Derek scrambled, I could breathe. While he faced professional and legal consequences, I was rebuilding. While his reputation crumbled, mine remained intact. Claire joined me on the dock, handing me a glass of wine. "Penny for your thoughts?" "I'm thinking about names," I replied. "Names?" "Yes. I've been Vivian Mercer for 10 years. Before that, I was Vivian Calloway. I'm not sure who I want to be now." Claire considered this. "Does it matter what your last name is? You're still you." "That's just it," I said, watching a heron glide gracefully across the water. "I'm not the same person I was 2 weeks ago. That Vivian trusted too easily, looked the other way too often, made herself smaller to fit someone else's expectations." "And the new Vivian?" I smiled, feeling a certainty I hadn't experienced in years. "She owns a lake house with a beautiful view, and she's just getting started." 6 months after discovering Derek's betrayal, I stood in the doorway of what had become my home office at the lake house, surveying the transformation. Gone were the ostentatious furnishings Derek and Natalie had selected, replaced with pieces that reflected my own taste, comfortable yet elegant, functional without sacrificing beauty. The room that had once been their master bedroom had been converted into a workspace for my newly launched consulting business. The legal proceedings against Derek had moved with surprising swiftness. Faced with overwhelming evidence of forgery and financial fraud, he had accepted a plea deal: 6 months of house arrest, 5 years of probation, mandatory financial restitution, and a permanent mark on his professional record. His career in financial management was effectively over. The man who had once commanded boardrooms now wore an ankle monitor while living in a modest apartment across town. "The conference call with Seattle is in 15 minutes, my assistant Dana reminded me, placing a fresh cup of coffee on my desk. I'd hired her 3 months ago when my client roster had grown too large to manage alone. "Thanks," I replied, settling into my chair to review the proposal one last time. My phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. "Final divorce decree signed by judge. It's officially over. Congratulations." A wave of emotions washed over me: relief, vindication, and a surprising touch of melancholy marking the definitive end of a decade of my life. I texted back a simple, "Thank you for everything," before turning my attention back to work. The consulting firm I'd established, Callaway Strategic Solutions, reclaiming my maiden name professionally, if not yet legally, had grown from a desperate attempt to rebuild my career into a thriving business. Ironically, the publicity surrounding Derek's downfall had brought me clients who appreciated my firsthand understanding of financial deception and the systems that failed to prevent it. My specialty had become helping companies identify and close loopholes in their financial oversight systems, the very weaknesses Derek had exploited at his firm. I'd also begun working with forensic accountants to develop better methods for detecting the early warning signs of fraud, both corporate and personal. The doorbell rang, and Dana went to answer it. A moment later, she appeared at my office door. "It's Jim Hartman," she said quietly. "He doesn't have an appointment." I nodded, unsurprised. "Send him in." Jim entered cautiously, as though unsure of his welcome. In the month since that fateful dinner party, our relationship had evolved from awkward encounters into a tentative professional respect. His firm had been my first client. "Vivian," he greeted me, accepting my gesture to sit. "I wanted to deliver this in person." He placed an envelope on my desk. Inside was a check for a substantial amount, far more than the consulting fee we had agreed upon. "What's this?" I asked. "The board approved a bonus payment," Jim explained. "Your recommendation saved us from 3 potential fraud situations already, and the SEC audit came back clean for the first time in years." I studied the check, momentarily speechless. The amount was almost exactly what Derek had initially stolen from our savings. "There's something else," Jim continued. "We'd like to put you on retainer permanently. The quarterly review system you implemented has been so effective that we want to make it standard practice." This was the validation I had been working toward. Recognition, not as Derek Mercer's defrauded wife, but as Vivian Callaway, financial security expert. "I'll have Dana draw up the paperwork," I agreed. "Thank you, Jim." After he left, I walked out to the deck overlooking the lake, watching the autumn leaves drift onto the water's surface. My phone rang, Renee calling for our weekly check-in. "So?" she asked without preamble. "Is it final?" "As of this morning," I confirmed, "and Hartman just put me on permanent retainer." "I knew it." Her enthusiasm made me smile. "This calls for celebration." "Dinner tonight?" "I'd love to, but I have the support group meeting at 7. The support group had been Claire's suggestion, a gathering of women who had survived financial abuse in their relationships. What had started as 3 of us meeting in a coffee shop had grown into regular sessions held in the studio above the lake house garage, with a rotating attendance of nearly 20 women. Some were still in the midst of their battles. Others, like me, had emerged on the other side. "Right, it's Thursday," Renee remembered. "Tomorrow, then. The new Thai place?" "Perfect." After we hung up, I remained on the deck, taking in the tranquility of the scene. The lake house that had once represented the ultimate betrayal had been reclaimed as a symbol of my resilience. The property that Derek had purchased to impress his mistress now served as both my home and the headquarters for my thriving business. Later, that evening, as the support group members settled into the circle of comfortable chairs in the studio, I was struck by how far we had all come. Jessica, who had arrived at her first meeting in tears after discovering her husband had remortgaged their home without her knowledge, was now helping others navigate the legal system. Maria, whose partner had opened credit cards in her name, had rebuilt her credit score and recently qualified for a small business loan. "I saw him yesterday," Jessica shared once we were all settled. "At the grocery store, he pretended not to see me." "How did that feel?" I asked. She considered the question. "Smaller than I expected. Like he wasn't the monster under the bed anymore, just a man who made terrible choices." Nods of understanding circled the room. We had all experienced that moment of revelation, when the person who had loomed so large in our narratives suddenly shrank to human proportions. "I received my final divorce decree today," I offered, feeling it important to share my milestone with the group that had supported me through the darkest days. Soft congratulations followed, and Maria raised her water bottle in a toast. "To new beginnings." "To ownership," Jessica added, her meaning extending beyond property. The meeting continued with updates and strategies, tears and laughter, the shared understanding of women who had walked similar paths. By the time everyone left, the evening had deepened into night, stars reflecting on the lake's surface. I was locking up when my phone buzzed with an incoming email. The sender's name made me pause. Natalie Winters. Her message was brief. "Vivian, I'm relocating to Portland next week for a fresh start. Before leaving, I wanted you to know that the information I provided helped me secure immunity in the criminal case. I've been cooperating with the Financial Crimes Unit regarding other irregularities at the firm that went beyond Derek. More importantly, I wanted to thank you for your unexpected grace that day. You had every right to vilify me, yet you saw me as another person caught in Derek's web. That moment changed how I view myself and my choices. I won't contact you again, but I couldn't leave without acknowledging the indirect role you played in my own reckoning. Natalie." I read the email twice before replying. "Natalie, thank you for letting me know about your move. I hope Portland offers the fresh start you're seeking. Life rarely gives us the villains and heroes we expect. In the story I thought I was living, you would have been the former. In the reality I discovered, we were both supporting characters in Derek's performance. I wish you well in writing the next chapter of your story, where you are the protagonist. Vivian." 1 year to the day after discovering the lake house, I hosted a different kind of gathering. Claire and her family were visiting for the weekend. Renee had brought her new boyfriend. My parents had driven up from Florida, initially skeptical about my decision to keep that house, but now appreciative of how I'd transformed it. As we enjoyed dinner on the deck, my father raised his glass. To my daughter, who turned betrayal into triumph. The toast touched me, but didn't quite capture the journey. Later, as the others chatted around the fire pit, I slipped away to the end of the dock, feet dangling over the water. My mother joined me, settling beside me with the ease of someone who had sat next to me through all of life's transitions. "You know what I'm most proud of?" she asked, her voice soft in the darkness. "What's that?" "That you didn't let bitterness become your compass. You found direction and determination instead." I leaned against her shoulder, momentarily the child I had been rather than the woman I had become. I had good examples. "What's next?" she asked, the question open-ended and full of possibility. I considered the future stretching before me. The business was thriving. The support group was expanding to other locations. My name change petition, back to Callaway, would be finalized next month. Derek's restitution payments were funding a scholarship for women rebuilding their lives after financial abuse. "I'm thinking of writing a book," I admitted. about financial empowerment for women. Not just my story, but all the patterns I've seen, all the warning signs I missed. You should, my mother encouraged. You've always had a talent for helping others understand complex ideas. As we sat together in comfortable silence, I reflected on the strange twist of fate that had brought me here. Derek had purchased this house to create a secret life away from me. He had put it in my name to hide it from his firm. Every deceptive choice he made had unwittingly laid the foundation for my transformation. The lake house stood as a testament to an uncomfortable truth. Sometimes our greatest opportunities arise from our deepest wounds. The betrayal that should have destroyed me instead revealed strengths I hadn't known I possessed. The financial deception meant to leave me destitute had instead launched a new career. The home purchased for his mistress had become my sanctuary. Derek had spent our savings believing he was building his future with someone else. Instead, he had inadvertently funded my liberation. His greatest mistake wasn't the affair or even the forgery. It was underestimating the woman whose name he put on the deed. That night, as I stood in the doorway looking at my family and friends, gathered around the fire, I felt a sense of completion. The story that had begun with shock and betrayal had transformed into one of resilience and reclamation. The narrative was no longer about what had been done to me, but what I had created from the aftermath. Derek had spent our savings on his mistress, only to discover too late whose name was on the deed. But the true ownership I had claimed went far beyond property. I had reclaimed my future, my confidence, and most importantly, the authorship of my own story. And that was a deed no one could ever forge. Coming up next, you'll see 2 more stories we handpicked just for you. If this one struck a chord, you're going to love what's next. Tap to keep the journey going.